What if you could upgrade your brain? And I don't just mean learning a bit faster. I mean really merging your mind with artificial intelligence. Now, I know, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but this technology is developing so fast, and it brings up one of the deepest questions we could ever ask ourselves. If you start enhancing your brain with silicon, are you still you? Let's get into it. And look, this is not some far-off, distant fantasy. You have people like Elon Musk actively working on this stuff right now. He's talking about a future where you become a human-AI symbiote, where there's a seamless link between your biological brain and a digital you. But you have to wonder, what actually happens to the original you in that whole equation?
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to look at the personal crisis this creates for your identity. Then, we'll get into this terrifying idea of a point of no return. And finally, we'll zoom way out to see what all this could mean for the future of the human race itself.
So, let's start with the individual. You. Me. Because before we can even begin to think about what this does to society, we have to grapple with the really personal, philosophical crisis that a brain-computer interface would create for every single person who thinks about getting one. Now, thankfully, we're not going into this blind. There are some brilliant people already mapping out this strange new territory. We're talking about thinkers like philosopher David Chalmers and academic Susan Schneider. We're going to be leaning heavily on their insights as we try to navigate this.
And that brings us right to the heart of it, the absolute core of the problem, the continuity of the self. I mean, this is a question philosophers have kicked around for centuries, right? But with cyborgization, it's not a thought experiment anymore. It's becoming a literal engineering problem.
And this one big question really splits into three smaller, crucial ones. First, there's the internal view. After the procedure, will you still feel like you? Is that inner voice, your sense of self, is it still there?
Okay, then there's the outside view. How do other people see you? Will your friends, your family, will they still recognize the person they've always known? Or are they going to see some stranger looking back at them through your eyes?
But here's the deepest, and honestly, the scariest question. It's about reality itself. Forget feelings or what other people think. Are you, factually, the same entity? Or does the procedure literally end your life, even while your body keeps on walking and talking? And this gets to the fundamental risk, which Susan Schneider puts so well. We call this stuff enhancement, right? But what if it's not an upgrade to you? What if it's a replacement of you? This jump from carbon to silicon could be a one-way trip, and the person who started the journey might not be the one who arrives.
No, to really get this, we have to make a super important distinction. Preserving consciousness is one thing. That's basically asking, is the light still on? Is there still some kind of subjective experience happening in there? But preserving personal identity, that's totally different. That's asking, is it my light that's still on? See the difference? It's one thing for a conscious machine to exist. It's another thing entirely for you to continue existing.
Okay, so this leads us to a really chilling idea, the point of no return. If you start gradually replacing bits and pieces of your brain with synthetic parts, is there some kind of line you can cross where you accidentally, delete yourself from existence? I mean, just walk through it with me. A 10% implant, okay, that's just augmenting your brain. At 30%, maybe you're replacing some damaged tissue. That still feels pretty safe. But what about 50%? Now you're swapping out perfectly healthy tissue just for a performance boost. And by the time you hit 70 or 90% silicon, is that little biological part of your brain even in charge anymore, or is it already gone?
This is basically the ultimate ship of Theseus paradox, As you replace each plank on the ship, when does it stop being the original ship? Except here, the stakes are, well, they're infinitely higher. At what percentage does enhancement actually put an end to the life of the person? So let's zoom out. If we somehow manage to survive that identity crisis on a personal level, we face something even bigger, a species-level event. Some are calling it a cyborgization singularity, and it would fundamentally change what it means to be human. Yeah, this whole idea is based on the concept of the technological singularity. But instead of just AI building better AI, imagine enhanced humans building better enhancement tech. Each new generation would get exponentially smarter, creating this runaway cycle of advancement that would leave regular old humanity in the dust, fast. Now, the thinker Werner Vinge makes a really vital distinction here. Most of us, when we think of superintelligence, we're thinking of weak superintelligence. A human-like mind that just runs way, way faster. But the real game changer is strong superintelligence. This isn't just faster thinking, it's a completely different kind of thinking.
It's something as far beyond us as our minds are beyond, say, an ant's.
And that is the real challenge here. If we want to even begin to imagine what a post-singularity world would look like, we can't just think about being faster. We have to try and wrap our heads around a type of consciousness that is, by its very definition, completely beyond our comprehension. Which brings us to the final, and maybe the most troubling fallout from all this, a potential split in the human species. What happens to the world when the enhanced and the unenhanced, the so-called naturals, have to share the same planet?
David Chalmers lays out 4 pretty stark possibilities for the future of unenhanced humanity. We could just go extinct, completely unable to compete. We could be isolated, maybe kept separate like animals in a nature preserve. We could live on, but in a state of permanent inferiority. Or, somehow, we could find a way to integrate.
And you can see the stakes here couldn't be higher. A split like this would be a massive weakness for our species. But on the flip side, if we could figure out how to get these 2 future branches of humanity to cooperate, it could unlock a future of prosperity that we can't even imagine.
But let's ask the cold, hard question. At first, sure, the naturals will still control all the resources, the money, the infrastructure, so cooperation will be a necessity. But what about later, when the enhanced are totally self-sufficient? What value could a regular, baseline human possibly offer to a being with strong superintelligence?
So, is there a solution? Well, one path forward is to get ahead of the problem. We could apply the same principles we use to protect minorities today, things like non-discrimination and inclusivity. And here's the fascinating twist. At first, those rules would be there to protect the enhanced minority. But down the road, those very same rules might be the only thing protecting the natural majority.
And you know, the responsibility for thinking about this can't just be on philosophers or governments. The tech companies building these brain implants, they have a moral duty to research not just the tech, but the future social contract we're all going to need to survive. They need to be architects of coexistence, not just architects of silicon.
Which really leaves us with this one final urgent question. The technology is coming. A great divide in our species is a very real possibility. So the hard work of figuring this out needs to happen now. Because if we wait until that gap actually appears, it might already be too wide to ever bridge again.